This is the Women of Wonder podcast, where we help women tap into their superpowers.
Hello and welcome to the Women of Wonder podcast. We have the wonderful and talented Belle Pérez Rivera with us today. So welcome to the podcast. We're so excited for you to be here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So I met Belle a few years back. Actually, I think it was in 2020 during my first yoga teacher training, which was completely online. And I was just really impressed by this woman that had, just a clear embodied practice of yoga and was such an incredible teacher, and have been following you and your journey since then. And today we're going to talk about everything in regards to the story of how you've come to be this teacher, the way that you've learned, and also learned to experience movement yourself, and then how that shows up with the women and the people that you support. So we're really excited to have this woman who clearly has an affinity for learning with her PhD and many different trainings under her belt, and an artist, a creative, a teacher, a yogi. So we're looking forward to learning from you today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We like to start off by asking a question around what you see as your superpower. Anything come to mind?
I think the very first word that came up was vulnerability, straight up. And it's just like this capacity and willingness to be present with what is coming up as it's happening in real time. And then it just so happens that I can put words to it and I can articulate that. So vulnerability for me is what I sense as a superpower, which also at times has felt like not a wound, but like a heavy burden, because I just feel so much. So, yeah.
And what has that journey been to use that vulnerability as a superpower?
I think it's like, it's been a lot of different directions, right? So, it's this not necessarily quest for authenticity, but this desire to know myself at the deepest level, or to know humans, or to know feelings at the deepest level. And so in one regards, I went about it from an academic perspective, and I was like, I'm going to learn everything about the psyche. And so I got a PhD in psychology, graduate certificate in women's studies. I wanted to know why we think the way we do and why we express ourselves the way we do and where that even comes from. And then in the process of doing that, a lot of things were happening in my personal life that were dark and pulling me towards the feeling, the emotions, the guttural, like psycho-spiritual stuff that comes up with just being a human. And then throughout all of that, my physicality also has been a big part of my quest for authenticity, and also like shifting to vulnerability and working with whatever comes up with the body. So you mentioned embodied, and that's something that you notice about me, and thank you, because I joke around in my yoga classes and I say, I know this class is called yoga, but that's just my excuse to teach embodiment. And like what I mean by embodiment is this understanding that our body is that encyclopedia of our lives. So our body, anything that has happened to us, through us, for us, in front of us, behind our back, and in our head, is imprinted in this body. And so as I'm moving in my practice, all of it is coming up, and it's not always words or thoughts, it's feelings and sensations. And that's what has led me to really tap into my vulnerability in places that I feel safe. So I know I just shared a lot of different buckets, but that's kind of where my vulnerability comes from, is deep feeling, movement, and a lot of thinking about things and trying to make connections on an intellectual level as well.
And thank you for that, because this just touches on so many areas that I feel, when someone talks about embodiment, I think there's a lot of question marks around what that means. And you just sharing about your journey and what it's helped you discover about yourself, I think in turn is also what helps you teach others to do the same. So I am curious, like, how do you teach someone to be embodied?
Well, a big piece is you yourself must be embodied. And how are you embodied? You're grounded in this present moment. You're aware of your breath. You're aware of how, like in this moment, I'm leaning forward. So knowing that, maybe I lean back a little bit and slow down and land a little bit in my body so I can connect with you. And so when I'm sharing embodiment, whether it's through yoga or whatever, I might say, like, press your right foot down as you inhale, lift your chest. Feel that from there, move here. And sometimes I might say, like, notice how this feels, not with words. And
Mm.
and so it's just like this invitation to step into this place that's beyond words, all the while I'm using words to get you there. But eventually one steps into it and you're just sensation oriented and feeling oriented because sensation is in the present moment. Embodiment is in the present moment.
And what do you think stops people from having those types of sensations and being able to experience what you've just described?
Well, there's different pieces. I think part of it is we're a thinking culture, so we're more prefrontal cortex and like we must know or think or talk or analyze or have an opinion or share our beliefs or say what's right and wrong. And so we're very heady. And so as we are very heady, that tends to pull us away from what we're feeling or what's going on in our bodies. So it could be something as straightforward as that. It could also be a faster paced culture that most of us live in. Like before the podcast interview started, you asked me like how my days have been, and I was like, I went on a walk. I didn't bring my phone. I just went on a walk with my dog. And I walked when wherever he wanted to go, we'd go there. So then I came home like 37 minutes later. So a big piece is I have chosen to slow down enough to feel. And so it could be that we're very heady. It could be the fact that we don't have time. It could be that we don't value that. Like I was in a conversation with someone who's a first responder, and his whole thing is I can't attach myself to what I'm feeling. And so then there's also this belief that emotions are dangerous. And in his line of work, like he's like, I can't cry when someone gets stabbed. I can't
Oh,
like get upset
yeah.
if someone gets stabbed. I need to be there and I need to check, and so I think there's also value judgments in that. And I think there's also like the need to move forward and do your job. And so there's a large portion of humans who have been taught that emotions are dangerous, emotions make you weak, and emotions might get in the way of your job and being a professional. And some of it is very true given their professions, right? So, and then those people, like, so that could be
Yeah.
part of it. Another could be if and when we land in our feelings, we feel an embodiment, you feel everything: joy, pain, grief, disgust, humility, shame. And most of us live in a society where we're swimming in like the waters of shame. And we all have shame to one level or another. And we go about our lives in particular ways to not feel that. So I know I just mentioned a lot right there, but again, this is just how my brain processes this. It's a really big topic.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that can recognize a lot of the things that you just shared there. Like for me, time stands out because we work with a lot of women that, whether they're juggling many different hats in their life or their mothers or, they have just many different things that they're trying to make sure that they're present for. And even finding a few minutes for themselves in the morning can feel like a big obstacle. So when you say that time and that space that you're giving to yourself so that you can drop into that embodiment and really start to feel what's coming up, I do think that's something that we hear a lot from people that they just don't have that time for. So for you, because you've worked with so many different people, are there any tools that you recommend when it comes to people that do have limited time and space for dropping into those feelings?
I mean, even if it's just 1 minute of taking a deep inhalation and a deep exhalation before you even take in anyone's anything. So like when you wake up, don't check your email, don't check your phone, don't talk, don't turn on the TV, just be there. And so like I know like this concept of like I don't have time to feel this. And it's just like, okay, so another way I experience the not having time is like this unwillingness or inability to process what's going on in present time. So what does that mean? It means I'm going to carry it on into the future and I'm going to be triggered more often. And therefore, I'm going to create situations that create more things that tax me and take time to process. And so I'm at a point in my life right now where I want to process in real time. And in order to do that, I need to give myself the time and the space to do that. And it could be 1 minute. Sorry, I don't know if you hear Zion. Can you hear him? He's sleeping. He's sleeping
Yeah.
under the desk and he's dreaming. So
It's
he's
amazing.
processing in sleep time.
Absolutely. I love it.
So yeah, someone who doesn't have time, I would say, don't check your phone as at the minute you wake up. And then another just very straightforward hack that has changed the quality of my life is I keep my phone on do not disturb. I keep my laptop on do not disturb because I'm going to check my emails when I check my emails, and I'm going to check my phone when I check my phone. And no one owns my time at all. I own my time. I understand when people are in relationships and they have children, and there's this worry. But then there could also be this trust that things are fine. And if and when they're not, chances are you check your phone often enough that you can deal with it.
Yeah, no, that's a great reminder that I think we do all have 1 minute to offer to ourselves first thing in the day before we dive into all of these responsibilities. And when you were talking about do not disturb and that no one else really owns your time, it's you, it reminds me of what comes up when I see you sharing on social media your regimen for movement and the discipline that you have for fitness and movement in your life.
Mm-hmm.
That's another topic that, I really feel like is challenging for people. Maybe they spend a month and they feel like they're getting into a new fitness regime, and then suddenly life happens or distractions happen, and all of a sudden they're pulled in the other direction. How do you see discipline and as a tool to maintain, what your priorities are in life?
The cool thing is I love what I do. So discipline in that regards is more from a place of devotion, and I
Mm.
absolutely love what I do. When I first got into yoga, we had to read the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and there was this quote in there that for me defines all of this for me, and it really resonated with me. And it's in order for your practice to be grounded and of the earth, it must be done consistently for a long period of time with devotion. And so it's just consistency is key. Doing it every day with love and devotion is important and long term. So, like, my PhD is in developmental psychology. I am interested in the entire trajectory and the entire process. And often, in regards to training, maybe we're more goal-based and we create these timelines that may either not be realistic or somehow are rigid and can't be adapted. So yesterday I was talking to a client and he made goals for himself at a time where he had time to train. And then now he's in a different place. There's divorce, there's change of jobs, there's change of locations. And I'm like, well, your timelines need to change and your volume and intensity need to change. And right now, you need to deal with three-dimensional life as it's coming to you. And so in general, I think a big piece is being compassionate with yourself as life is happening and inviting this training or this physicality to be something that supports you, strengthens you, and then gradually you start building resilience and believing in yourself. And like I said, for me, I genuinely love training. I love finding things that are playful and athletic and challenging and putting my nose to the ground and doing it. But again, it's coming from a place of love and it's coming from an understanding that it's going to take time and good work takes time.
And when you talk about strength, this is a topic that for women, I know some have shied away from. Maybe they have a yoga practice, or they feel like anytime they're lifting a weight, there might be adding bulk to their body, or creating too much tension that they don't feel comfortable anymore. And I think we're seeing a shift in the research, a shift in, how people are showing up in society when it comes to fitness. What have you seen in terms of that evolution for women that are now focusing more on strength for quality of life and longevity?
Um, well, I tend to go into the rivers and currents that appeal to me. So
Mhm.
the way I see feminine's like female embodiment of strength, I just think it's badass and well resourced, and she knows where she's coming from and she knows what she has to offer. So it's like a female like cat, like a jungle cat walking
Mhm.
in, and she's just like, you can't for me, I can't take my eyes off someone who's just like knows what they're working with. They're strong, they're agile. And another way to say it is not necessarily performance based, but it is a
Mhm.
certain level of like what the body can do more so than what the body looks like. And so for me, when I first started yoga practice, for example, I was just wanting to have somewhere like a practice where I could be by myself and figure out what was going on with me. And I wanted to learn how to be by myself. And then gradually, when I started bringing in more weights and strength training, I was like, wow, this is a powerful body. And there's certain times where I just feel very alive in my body. And so I'm coming at it from those perspectives. And in regards to the industry as a whole, the women I follow are just really good at from every angle. So I'm into more calisthenics, body weight fitness. I have gotten more into strength training and physique and body composition and just being honest about what I want my body to look like. And to be honest, I think an athletic woman is a very attractive woman on a physical level. And I actually like having strong legs or a strong back. Or another way to say it is when I'm at strong, I'm well resourced and I feel it and I look it and I speak from that space. So for me, being strong equals being well resourced. It doesn't equal bulky. And if we wanted to be honest about bulkiness, I wonder if bulkiness is too much weight, too much volume, or too much intensity. And so at that point, you would just change the amount of weight you're doing, how many reps you're doing it, with what intensity and tempo you're doing it. And so there's very particular equations one could work with to be like, actually, I want to be strong, lift weights, and not be bulky. Done. That's called bodybuilding. Like you build the body you want and you kind of adjust as you see fit. So as I'm lifting weights, like the other day I was like pressing 250 pounds, but I didn't bulk up because I built up to have that capacity to have that strength. I didn't just try to do it within 1 month. These are strengths that are accumulated over time, and you just accrue time under tension. And so, like, if and when you want it to be really strong, chances are you slow it down. So, like for pull-ups, I'm holding it at the top as long as possible and slowly coming down. So you work with the eccentric. So you can get strong really fast, but that doesn't equate bulkiness. And then we haven't even talked about food. Like, what are you
Yeah.
eating? Because often the main foods that make me bulky, I just don't do that. And for me, it's mostly processed foods
Mhm.
that bloat me. And so it could be food based, it could be volume, tempo, intensity. And like I said, for me, strength equals being well resourced. So, and I think it's so beautiful seeing women, strong female athletes in the gym. I just feel really grateful that I'm in the generation where women are crushing it at the gym.
Well, you're an incredible role model for those of us who are looking to build that strength. So thank you
Oh,
for sharing
thank
that. And
you.
also to understand these different components that you spend a lot of time cultivating your understanding of what works for you, what works for your body, what makes you feel good and well resourced. So I think that equation is maybe something that, if we're trying to replicate what someone else does and don't have that ability to filter through what has been working for us, there's a lot of different factors there that you just spoke of. And I'm curious because you said like nutrition is a big component of that. Like what
Mhm.
has evolved for you and your relationship to nutrition?
Yeah. So because I come from a yoga background and I grew up very religious, so like Rastafarian culture also spoke to me when I was like in my 20s. I got into vegetarianism and I was vegetarian and vegan for 12 years. So from like my 20s to like 30s. And I became very I became very indoctrinated in the ideology of like religious vegetarianism, that that is the right way to do things, that and so I got into really black and white thinking. And in order to do that, I had to disconnect a little bit from my body. And so what started happening is I lived in India and I lived in Bali and I lived in all these places, and all of a sudden I got really sick. Fast forward in 2015, I had autoimmune disorder, Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, where I was just like constantly purging like 13 to 15 times a day. I'd get bloated, I get lightheaded. And so I was just like really sick. And I had to have emergency surgery in Sweden. And then I flew back and then I had surgery, my last surgery in 2020, because my rectum and my sphincter tore. Like it was just
Wow.
like brutal and disgusting and diabolical. And I was still vegan and vegetarian. And I did all my food tests and I was coming out as having sensitivity to sugars, to gluten, to hemp, to soy, legumes, nuts. I was like, I'm allergic to being vegan.
Wow. Yes.
Like,
Wow.
what am I supposed to eat? And so please know I fasted, I did colonics, I prayed,
Yeah.
I did plant medicine. I tried so many things, and still my body was depleted. I was only going to vegetarian doctors because I didn't want anyone telling me I needed to eat meat because I believed it was evil to eat meat, or I was hurting other animals, and I refused to, ahimsa, nonviolence. And my vegetarian doctor was like, Marie, like ignoring your body is violence. Ignoring what your body is, ignoring the fact that you're
Wow.
torn right now and like you refuse to feed your vessel. Like you need to come to terms with a natural life cycle. And I know that vegetarianism, like I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone. I'll share my experience of it is I had to deal with my immaturity around death and the fact that all sentient beings die and all sentient beings become food for other sentient beings. That's just a fact of life. And to remove myself from that cycle is to be a little bit naive to to all of that. And so yeah, that happened. And then I got a diagnosis that I was on the like pre-stages of liver cancer. And
Wow.
at that point, my friends were like, Marie, just can you just eat meat? And I was like, why? And then finally I did. And when I did, the day I ate salmon, I cried all day. And I like stared at it. I was like, I'm not gonna put this in my mouth. Anyways, when I finally did in like 2018, my eyes cleared up. My like it just immediately I realized that I had come like I was in a much lower sedated space of brain fog, migraines, and adopting all these identities just because I wasn't well fed. And once I ate salmon, it was like it was the
Wow.
first day in years that I didn't hurt, like my body didn't bloat and like explode. And so I was lucky that it was pretty straightforward what I needed. Another way to explain what happened is first off, I fundamentally disagreed I had an autoimmune disorder. I fundamentally disagree my body is attacking itself. I just disagree and I dissent on thesis. That's not true. And so I went down the rabbit hole of nutrition and of medicine and nutrition. And what I realized was when I was living in India, I probably got a virus or a parasite or a worm or a bacteria or
Wow.
yeast overgrowth. Any of those things, do you know what they feed off of? Sugar.
Sugar. Yeah.
You know what breaks down to sugar? Everything I was eating, except meat, except like coconut, or excuse me, avocado and like leafy greens. And so like it was just so obvious that what I needed to do was stop feeding the bad army or the viruses, the bacteria. And so I started starving them. I was on a medicalized ketogenic diet and I tried going vegan, and that was bad. That just didn't do anything. That was just a waste of a lot of money. And when I went on medicalized ketogenic with animal protein, my body just like absorbed all of the nutrients because it had been depleted for so many years. And what I think happened was, as let's say I got a virus in India, because my immune system got so low, bacteria built in there, and then a parasite got in there, and then all of these funky, disturbing were messing with my microbiome, and my body was trying to attack anything and everything. It wasn't attacking itself. It was trying to get the invaders out. And the main way I was able to do that was I stopped consuming everything that didn't serve me, and I started consuming everything that did, which is meat, avocado, eggs, leafy greens. And so another way to say it is just fast forward. I'm on a single ingredient diet. So, and it's mostly animal protein. So if you open up my fridge, you see eggs, that's a single ingredient, meat, single ingredient, leafy greens. And I just combine natural ingredients and eat it with reverence and love and gratitude.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as someone who embodies, like you just, I mean, you radiate health and wellness, and clearly you've found that nutrition that works so well for you. So even hearing that story, like I had no idea that you would have come from that place. Like that's quite the journey and quite the ride for you to have to discover what works and what doesn't. And I think a reminder for us to be checking in with maybe what we think we should be eating versus like what our body is telling us that we need.
Yeah, thank you. And what I realize is like we have so many different systems of communication going back to embodiment or just being a human. Like we have our digestive system, we have our circulatory system, we have our skeletal, muscular, like we have all of these systems that are I think of them as DJs or like turntables. And if one is off, our nutrition is off, then it starts throwing other stuff off. And in our society, we have like chronic inflammation and autoimmune disorder. And it's just like, yo, your turntables are letting you know something's off. Like, obviously, you could ignore it and be okay with like static or like skipping of songs, but like, please know that that will negatively affect all the other systems. It's just a matter of when. It's not if, it's about when it will happen. And for me, it happened in 2015. I was lucky it happened, and I was able to deal with it within that 5-year time frame. So yeah.
Brilliant. And as someone who has been running their business for quite some time now, I'd love to just hear a little bit about that journey for you and what it means to be an entrepreneur in today's world.
Yeah. So, I never thought I'd have my own business. Like with my psychology degree, I thought I was just going to teach at the university and do research and travel, and that was kind of what I wanted to do. But it just so happened that when I lived in DC, I also started teaching yoga, and all of a sudden, yoga started taking over. And within like a year of teaching, I started realizing that yoga was actually paying me better, had better hours, and I didn't have to take attendance. Like people were like showing up because they wanted to. And so my whole thing has always been, I only work with people who want to work with me. And which for an entrepreneur, maybe, I've been like kind of, what's it called? Blocking myself because I just allow the people who are attracted to what I'm teaching and how I'm teaching to come to me. Um, and in regards to entrepreneur, I considered myself an entrepreneur maybe starting in 2020 when lockdown happened and everything went online. Before then, I had a belief that yoga couldn't be taught online or it was lacking in integrity because you didn't know each other. But after about a month or so, I was like, I need to provide for myself. And what happened with lockdown is it actually opened up a lot more tentacles or networks where I could stay in touch with my people who had moved to Puerto Rico or California or New York or Barcelona. And all of a sudden, the aperture of possibility opened. And at that point, I started being honest about like, actually, I want to step in this current and I have something to share. And I also started learning from teachers who hadn't been available to me before financially or geographically. And so for me, it was more about stepping into the current. When I talked to a business coach like last year, he was like, "You're not an entrepreneur, you're a solopreneur." And I was like, "What's the difference?" He was like, "An entrepreneur knows what needs to be done and hires people out to get like their website done or their whatever done, their advertising, I am a solopreneur. I'm like, I do everything on my
Wow.
own." And it's been really beautiful because everything I get to be the creative director of. And so I've been able to bring in all sides of myself of creativity, emotional, writer, athlete, researcher, travel person. And so what's interesting is my Instagram account started and still is my own personal journal. And throughout, yeah, I'll say I'm teaching a class on Tuesday night or I have a retreat in November. Like, I'll throw that in, but as a whole, I think that's what people are resonating with. And that goes back to the very first question, vulnerability and authenticity, is like, this is my personal journal. Obviously, I could strategize and get a lot more followers or make a lot more money, but I'm more interested in community versus audience. So, for an entrepreneur journey, it's just about deciding what you want. And the strategies you use are vastly different if you want to accumulate a following and get ambassadorships or sponsorships versus someone who's interested in connection and community. They don't have to be opposites. Maybe that's part of my
Right.
learning journey is I thought they were opposites. And so I have these two other friends. We used to train all the time for years. And we trained when Instagram became a thing. And they were constantly recording everything. And I was really uncomfortable around that. And they're like, "Oh, we're getting famous. Like, that's what we're going to do." And I remember being like, I don't want to be famous. I want to be well regarded. Fast forward 10 years later, they're famous. I'm well regarded, but they're also well regarded. And some people
Yeah.
think I'm famous, So it's like, it's not either or. So for entrepreneur, some people will try to like tell you it's one or the other, but eventually it's both and also.
And
And learn as you go.
beautiful. And the fact that you've been able to evolve and shift into this online world. And, I've been able to witness and experience that. And I feel like it's the people who resonate with the work that you do, the voice that you have, that really also want to learn from you and be part of that community. So that's
Mhm.
a beautiful thing to be able to have had shifted and now get to share with the world. Are there any particular offerings for the people who are listening to this podcast that you have upcoming that people might be able to join in with or participate
Mhm.
around?
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I have a retreat in Mexico in November, 11/11. It's that week. And that's going to be really fun. So in general, the retreats I have are maybe like 15 people or so. I prefer to work in smaller groups and maintain that
Mhm.
safe container. It'll be like embodiment, yoga, handstands, mobility, cenotes, or like nature and swimming. I have that. I also have my online platform called Roots Love Yoga. And that has a bunch of classes and courses like 200 hours, 50 hours, 300 hours. And I'm much more organic. So whenever I meet people I resonate with, I'm like, well, what do you want to see? I also created an app this year, which I need to upload videos to and work on. So my vision is maybe starting in August teaching online classes that are both live and also available on recordings based on whoever's practicing with me or what I'm doing. So Monday might be mobility, Friday might be fitness or flexibility, and then Sundays is a longer practice. I create programs like booty workouts, astrology stuff. So yeah, I do a lot of different things depending on what people want. So yeah.
Really, I love that. And I'm excited to see when that app comes into this
Yeah.
world.
Yeah, and the way you and I started working one-on-one was the
Yes.
empowered strength, which I
Yes.
will likely do another iteration of it. And that's just where I get to work with women and we talk about their goals, nutrition, sleep, and workouts. And so I create personalized programs for women. And some women want to get their handstands, others want to finish their Ashtanga yoga second series. Others want like a nice booty. So we can do any and all of it. Another, like I also do mentorship for other women and business owners. And yeah, so it's pretty panoramic in reach.
Is there any final bits of wisdom or excitement for the year ahead that you want to share before we sign off for the day?
Just thank you, and I'm super grateful. This was very lovely. And I've been working with this piece of living each day, like expect a miracle, and not a particular miracle, and not within the timelines you want, but just like live life in such a way that like every moment that's unfolding is a miracle, and it can like go beyond your perceived ideas of what is for you. So yeah, just living in wonder.
Thank you for that. And that
Yeah.
is certainly my inspiration for the rest of today. So
Oh,
thank you
good.
for being here and for joining us and sharing everything that you do. And I highly recommend anyone to follow along on Marie Belle's journey. So thank
Thank
you for being
you.
here.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you.